Hey, everybody, welcome back into another edition of the drbicuspid.com podcast. My name is Kevin Henry, editor-in-chief for drbicuspid.com. We've started a series on the life cycle of the dental practice employee with my good friend and HR guru, Alan Twigg, and we're continuing that today. And Alan, I'm excited to see where you're going, my friend.
Hey, Mr. Kevin, I am doing great, and thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure to talk about HR, and today's topic is one of my favorites. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
And it's a hot one right now. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the floor over to you, and I'm going to soak up some knowledge as well.
All right, sounds good. So, yeah, part one, we did leadership culture. Part two, we talked about kind of some basic foundational stuff, compliance and whatnot. So, this one is all about recruiting, hiring, and onboarding. So it's like in an ideal world, and it's never an ideal world, but in an ideal world, we lay all that foundation, we put all those things in place, and now we can bring people into our practice and set them up for success. So what I have today, and obviously we're not going to be able to cover every single thing that everyone needs to know about recruiting and hiring and onboarding in however many minutes this is, but this is just some tips, pearls, wisdoms, things that we have seen to be successful because obviously we're in a labor shortage right now in dental. It's hard to find good people. And obviously we want to, stack the deck so that when we do find someone, we can sort of make sure that we're not, in a sense, losing them and we're right back where we started in 6 months. So I want to start with, if you're going to hire people from within the world of dental, which I'm sure every practice ideally would want to hire people who have dental experience, they've already been in the industry for some period of time. If you're going to hire within dental, the big pearl wisdom is what we call the UEP, which stands for the Unique Employment Proposition. So it's similar to the USP, the unique selling proposition. So why should a patient choose your practice versus the practice down the street? Putting that into words as far as clinical skills and team and technology and all that. The UEP is the same thing because you got to think if you want a really good rock star employee, someone who's a 10 out of 10, that person is not very likely is already employed somewhere else, but they're probably checking the job postings out there because they're a little bit unhappy or disgruntled at their current place. And so your practice has to be so compelling and so amazing that this person is willing to take a chance and leave a job that they're currently employed at to come work for you. And the question is, why should they choose your practice versus the practice down the street? This is not about wages and it's not about benefits. Yes, those things are important. You need to be competitive. That's the word to use, is competitive wages, competitive benefits. You don't have to be at the absolute top end in order to get a good person. UEP is all about your culture, your values, the rest of the team. What is it going to feel like to be an employee in your practice? What I recommend is that someone sits down with a cup of coffee, dedicate 20 minutes, just do a word dump. Just dump anything that you can think about your practice and how it works and what it's like to be a new employee. Write it all down, copy and paste that into ChatGPT or something, and have it compose a 3 to 5 sentence thing that sort of puts all of that into words, and then put that out there in your job postings. Make sure that's part of the interview process. Just get that out there so that people know why they should choose your practice versus some other office. So that's if you're hiring within dental. If you are hiring people from outside the world of dental, someone who's got a really great attitude, really good fit, someone that seems like they would be someone that you could train on the world of dental, the biggest thing you want to be careful there is just the realities of training. I think a lot of times when you're immersed in the world of dental, you kind of forget what it's like to be brand new. And a lot of times this works and a lot of times it doesn't work because people go into it thinking, oh, well, after, 3 months or so, this person should be pretty capable. And you want to think about, do you have the capacity to train this person? Does your team have the capacity to train this person? Because they're going to need a lot of training. And if you go into it thinking, oh, we'll just dedicate, a couple months and they'll be fine, you're probably going to be disappointed. So if you're hiring outside of dental, just be really careful with that. Another pearl is just, and this one's really, really hard, it's just to not rush the hiring process. And I know, especially if someone left unexpectedly, you're short-staffed, I know there's this thing of like, we got to get someone as soon as possible. And there's usually a temptation there to kind of cut corners, but really as much as you possibly can, the old adage of hire slow, fire fast, really critical. Another big thing right now is just AI and how AI is coming into the recruiting process. So we're seeing more and more applicants use AI to write their cover letters, to write their resumes, especially with cover letters. You'll read that cover letter, and what they'll do is they'll take your job posting, put that into ChatGPT, have ChatGPT write a cover letter that, kind of hits those points. And you're going to read that cover letter and go, oh my gosh, this person is perfect. And just remember, it was probably written by ChatGPT, and just be careful with that. Recognize that, especially resumes, you still need to do your due diligence there. And just know that just because they've got this resume or this cover letter doesn't mean it's a guarantee. The other thing is more and more people are starting to use basically screening systems. So there are a lot of big companies that have these systems. They're powered by AI. AI reviews the resumes and then kind of filters out the ones that, it thinks would be most beneficial for you. Sounds very convenient, saves time. And there are a lot of risks with this. So a big company out there that's called Workday has one of these. They have a lawsuit against them right now for age discrimination. Someone that applied for a lot of different jobs at a lot of different companies that were using this AI screening tool, and this person is now suing, and the lawsuit is actually progressing forward. So just one of those risks. If you're thinking about using one of these things, just be very, very careful, because ultimately a lot of the liability will fall on you and not entirely on this other company. All right, so let's talk about interviewing. The gold standard, gold wisdom, whatever, when it comes to interviewing is you've got to ask what are called behavioral based questions. There's other categories like credentials and, their training or how many years of experience they have with this or that. But you want at least 60% of your questions to be behavioral based questions. So, for example, I would say, so Kevin, tell me about a time when you had a difficult child in the chair, and how did you handle working through that? So now it's not just, I'm not just asking you, do you have the ability to work well with children? Because obviously the answer is yes. No one's going to say, oh, no, I can't handle that. So what you want to do is have a behavioral based question that basically is based on this idea that past behavior indicates future behavior. So the idea is this person then is thinking back over a time. They're telling you a specific scenario. And if you want to take it to the next level, you say, tell me who I can talk to at your previous practice who can corroborate or verify this. So behavioral based questions, super important. Another thing about interview questions is make sure that for the most part, you're asking the same questions of each applicant. So you want to have a set of interview questions, and you're ideally doing those same questions every time. You may vary that a little bit if there's someone who has a particular certification or a particular skill set that you want to kind of drill into and ask about. That's fine. But ideally, you want to have the same questions. And that's just to avoid potential claims about, discrimination or favoritism, or just kind of getting almost like an inaccurate picture of folks. The last thing I have is background checks and reference checks. These are things that I know nobody wants to do because they take time. They can potentially delay the hiring process a little bit. Now, when we say background checks, what we want you to do ideally is work with a good, reputable third-party company. There are two companies that we recommend. One is called DataQuest, and the other is called Pre-Employ. These are legitimate, tried and true background check companies. They've been doing it for a long time. They have accurate records. If you just Google background check companies, you'll get 50 million different results. And you'll get, my cousin Vinny's background checking company for $10. And you're going to think, oh, that sounds good, $10. But you've got to be really careful about using a good, reputable company. Now, once you're all set up with these companies and you have all the, what you want and everything, it's actually a very quick process. 24 hours, maybe 48 hours to get criminal results and other stuff back. So it doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't take a lot of money. And for example, with DataQuest, all you have to do is give them the info. They take care of everything, all the paperwork, all the disclosures, all the consent forms, and they have a web-based system where you can see kind of the progress of how the background check is going, which results have come back. It's very, very easy. And it's super important. I mean, we know the stats on embezzlement in dentistry, and just even things like negligent hiring claims, which would come up if, let's say, Let's say an employee physically assaulted someone at a previous practice. That's the kind of stuff that may come up in a background check. Now, the other piece is reference checking. Now, when we say references, we what we're really talking about is past employers. So we're not talking about their uncle or their buddy or somebody that they put on the resume as a reference. There's no point in calling those people. Do not waste your time. What you want to do is call their past employers. And if you want to be even more careful, you will Google that practice and call the phone number that's listed on that practice website, not the phone number that maybe they list on the resume or something like that. Because again, even that can be, a phone number that just goes to their friend who's going to say nice things about you. So call the past employers, say I'm hiring Kevin. Kevin worked for you. I see on his resume he worked from this date to this date, and you want to just try to get as much info as you can. Now, don't be surprised if you call and they say, we're not going to say anything, or we'll only verify the dates of employment, we'll tell you nothing else. There is a form that you can get, and if you're a Ben Erickson client, you have access to it. This is a simple form that basically the applicant fills out, signs, and it's a release of liability. You then give that form to the former employer, and it basically gives them permission to give the full picture of this person. And you're in a sense releasing liability, or the applicant is releasing liability. So that's one thing you can do. Another thing you can do is if you're doing those behavioral based questions and someone tells you a story about, oh yeah, I had this thing and I was awesome and I did a great job, you can say to this former employer, well, Kevin said that, one time there was this thing and he handled it beautifully. If that's not true, oftentimes the other person, the former employer, will not be able to contain themselves, and they'll be just say, what? Kevin said that? That's not true. Kevin didn't do anything. I handled that, or our manager handled that. It kind of breaks them open a little bit. So you can kind of use that as a tactic to, again, your goal here is just to try to get as much information about this person as you possibly can to get an accurate depiction of them. Because again, we do interviews, we do all these things, we kind of get a sense of this person, and we just met this person. They can put on a mask for multiple interviews and all of that. And we need to do everything we can to make sure that we don't hire the wrong person. So again, take your time. I know it's a pain. I know there's a lot of steps to it, but if you can get that right person and get them, in your practice and onboarded, it's so, so important. And one last quick thing on onboarding, folks can check out, we have a resource that's an onboarding guide, and we can put a link to that in the show notes. Onboarding, you just need to recognize onboarding ideally takes at least 6 months. I know we always want to say, oh, a couple weeks or a month or something, this person should be off and running. Onboarding, you just got to go into it with the mindset this is going to take a long time, because if you invest in the employee early on and really get everything dialed in, all the expectations, all the cultural aspects of what you need, that will make a huge difference with this person, and they will be set up for success, and ultimately in the long run, it'll be good. So there you go. Some tips, some tricks on the whole hiring, recruiting process.
I love it. And I will tell you, thank you for emphasizing the references and doing things the right way on that instead of trying to save money, because you and I have both heard the horror stories. And I'm very, very thankful that you emphasized that. So great advice, my friend, all the way around. Great advice. I know this is going to be something that helps a lot of dentists and office managers out there who are in charge of the hiring process. So I appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. Like I said, no, HR is not everyone's favorite topic, but it's important. You got to have employees, good employees, to achieve all your big goals. Yeah, always happy to chat with you about this stuff.
And Alan mentioned Ben Erickson. We're going to put the link to that in the article if you're watching this on drbicuspid.com, as well as in the show notes if you're on YouTube or one of our podcast platforms listening to this, because really important that you understand who the professionals are out there who can help guide you through some of these processes. So, Alan, I'm already looking forward to the next one, my friend, and thanks for what you've done already in this series.
You're welcome. Always happy to help, and appreciate it.
And thanks to all of you for listening to this episode of the drbicuspid.com podcast. And as Alan mentioned, we're going to make sure to put links to the previous two on drbicuspid.com in the show notes, as well as in the article, because I really want you to catch up on this series if you've missed out on one of the first 2 episodes. This is part 3. 3 more to come, I believe. Is that correct?
Yep, we got 3 more.
There you go. So we're at the halfway point. Great information to help you in your practice. Till next time, it's Kevin Henry, editor in chief, signing off. And as always, wishing you nothing but success ahead.